in a state of
Oops.
Oops.
The water management. Should I start that again?
Yeah, start it again.
Is the meeting of the Public Outreach Committee of the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. It is Thursday, December 15th, 2022, 10 a.m. Meeting is in order.
All right, and I'll conduct a roll call. Committee member Paul,
here.
committee member Anderson,
Here,
Chair Riley. We have a quorum of the committee. And then next on our agenda is public comment. We have no public attendees, so we could go to action items.
okay, the first action item is to consider adoption of the October 24th committee meeting minutes.
I move to adopt.
I will second.
Right, and no members of the public are online, so I'll conduct a roll call vote. Committee member Paul,
Yes.
committee member Anderson,
Yes,
committee member Chair Riley. Absent, the motion is adopted on a vote of 2-1.
2-0, right?
201.
Yeah, 2 ayes, 1 no, and then 1 abstention, or 0 abstentions.
No, not one.
there's
There's no no vote.
Yeah, there's no no vote.
Right,
2 ayes, 1 absent. Yeah. Okay. Well, we got that straight.
Our minds are on the holidays.
They're still in bed.
So that brings us to discussion items.
Yeah,
Item number 2 is review progress by Wellman Ed. Primarily, let's do a little recap over what we've seen since the decision was made to hire. I've been extraordinarily impressed with the development of the email list and the, I think we're using MailChimp. Phil, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
And the response that we've gotten. Stephanie is on the receiving end of the response emails. And I can tell you there were a few members of the public who were like questioning our, what they said, over politicization of our communication. But generally speaking, people accepted these intrusions to their inbox completely naturally, and most of them were grateful. There were many folks who chose to email back and were very positive. And there were a few folks who emailed back to challenge some of the district's positions, but it was civilized discourse. And I think we managed to penetrate the market quite well, so that our messaging was out there during the course of the Coastal Commission hearing and so forth. And I believe it, at a minimum, it tempered the willingness of the public to just accept whatever the Coastal Commission did. It brought it closer to home for people. At the same time, Marina Coast Water District was leveraging a similar technique, and we were getting a number of messages from them. There was some crossover, obviously, but I think our presence was really well taken during that whole process. The statistics that so Phil has sent as follow-up to most of the Thursday mailers, some follow-up statistics. They've been really good. The number of opens is high, and there's a lot of folks who've kind of, I don't know what the term would be, but passed it along to others on their mailing lists. So that in and of itself was really worth it. The messaging that went along with that was really important for establishing public awareness of what's going on. Oh, by the way, I see that George Riley's joined us. So you may want to just note that in the minutes, Joelle. But with that, Stephanie, I know Phil sent you an email. I don't know if that's more with respect to discussion item 3, but Phil, do you want to summarize a little bit what you perceive has gone on? We are going to shift a little bit to some of the more mundane things that the district needs done on a regular basis in advance of kind of heating back up on what we'll talk about under item 3. But Phil, go ahead, and then Stephanie, if you want to add anything.
Great, Dave. Well, no, I'm delighted with the way things went. I mean, it was quite a challenge during that period of time to really sort of bring myself up to the point where I really understood the issues well enough to be able to help you folks articulate them clearly to the community. But that was my, that was my objective. And just essentially, it might be a good idea here for me just to sort of recap exactly what it is that I did. So you folks are aware of it. You may not be aware of everything that I was doing. So my intention really was to create a new public outreach system, that supports the water district's objectives. That was the idea. How do we do that? What are the various elements of that? And number one, we countered Cal-Am and clearly articulated our message in the run up to the Coastal Commission, through the development of 4 full-page ads in Monterey County Weekly and 3 half-page ads in the Pinecone, which in my experience, got a very positive response to, and in some cases, a very reactive response to. But that was sort of the idea, was to boldly state to the community exactly what our position was. And it wasn't so much being in the attack mode, but just being clear. This is where we stand. This is what we believe. And this is where we're headed. And then number 2 is positioning Water District as a leader in the water supply solutions. And that's specifically what the mailers have been about. And we send out 5 thematic newsletters to 25,000 ratepayers. So we covered a lot of ground. We got a lot of basic information about that. One of the big issues was the lack of understanding of what Pure Water Monterey was. There are a lot of folks out there who just do not understand what it's about. So, I went real simple, real clear. This is exactly what Monterey, where it came from, what it's doing, where it's headed, that sort of thing. And again, as Dave said, very positive response. The metrics that I looked at for the newsletter were really excellent, really excellent. I mean, we were getting, of the 25,000 that we were sending out with each newsletter, we were getting somewhere in the neighborhood of 11,000 opens, which is tremendous. I mean, that's just a little under half of those emails were being opened. So it reached a lot of people. And, how deeply they read it, we don't really know, but, we tried to keep it, like I said, interesting, informative, with a few pictures as well. And then we updated the social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and developed and posted 18 new ads over a period of 60 days to reinitiate the ongoing dialogue with ratepayers. And social media is an interesting thing. It just basically, it takes time to really sort of develop the, the necessary momentum to really have some kind of an effect and begin to establish a dialogue, with the ratepayers out there. So that is the intention there. And the idea is to keep that up over time and to continue to build that. And then just this week, I updated this week's brand ad on the Carmel River ASR for the Monterey County Weekly. It was great timing, because basically it dealt with the water flowing out to the ocean there in Carmel, and so it was great timing on that regard. In terms of really, I don't think a lot of people in this area really even understand the concept of ASR. I mean, I didn't, frankly. clearly understand it until, you know, I started working with the water district 2 months ago. So I think that is just really, you know, and it's interesting. Let me just bring up one other thing too. I was reading the article that was posted this morning from by Kevin Tilden, you know, where basically he was going on about how enthusiastic they were about Pure Water Monterey and the expansion, and, you know, about how they couldn't possibly sort of move forward right now because they don't have the funds to support the building of the infrastructure. And, you know, to me, it's just really appalling doublespeak that they need to be called out for. And then number 5, finalizing the mock-up of the proposed design for the ASR signage. And I've been working with Maureen Hamilton over there, and we've got a mock-up that we'll be showing to Dave and Maureen within the next,
I'm sorry, what is that?
well, you guys saw it. I think they presented it, well, not I think. I was there for a board meeting about a month and a half ago, and Maureen Hamilton presented a project where they were developing signage for the ASR building over in, remember that?
Yeah,
Jim, yeah, it was shaped in a water drop.
That's
We were
correct.
concerned that
Oh,
was too
yeah, okay,
restrictive
thank
and
you.
so on.
All right,
And water
coming
drop.
back, thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was some discussion as to how you could fit a rectangle into a water drop.
Or a rock.
So we actually found a way to make that work. So you'll be seeing that, you know, within the next 2 or 3 days. So that's essentially what we've done. I mean, there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more in the background. I mean, I worked with Dave on some ideas for the presentation at the Coastal Commission, and there was a lot of other things that sort of went on simultaneously to really make sure that everything that we were doing was sort of working in symbiosis in the direction that we wanted to move in. But frankly, I mean, from my perspective, I couldn't have been happier with the way the whole thing came together. And I really thank you for, you know, your support in helping to make that happen. So that's what I call phase 1, and that's done. So those systems are in place for us to use, you know, as we decide to use them. And then I've got some other ideas here, some areas that we could discuss today. So before we do that, is there any comments about what we've done that, yeah, go ahead, Amy.
I have a question, or 2 questions.
Yep.
Number 1, I haven't seen any of these. So are the board not getting the emails? Because it would be great to see what's going out so we can.
I'm sorry to hear that, because you were definitely on the list. It should have gone out to you.
Yeah, all of the board members are on our mailing list.
That's very interesting.
Well, I tell you what, Amy, I will check to make sure why.
Or maybe it's an old email address.
What email address should it be?
Amy, check your junk mail. It's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, I do look at that, but I will look at it again. But if you send me one out, I don't know if it's easy to do this, just one out sometime today. It's Carmel Cello Gal at Comcast. It used to be SBC Global, but it's Comcast.net.
Right.
Could happen. I don't know.
What,
Anyway,
is this an email message we're talking about?
yeah.
It would be one of the MailChimp.
Wait, what's the title? What's the lead line? What's the subject line when it goes out on email?
Well,
It's-
very depending on what the subject is. You've been getting them, haven't you, George?
Well, no, yeah, I think so. And I'm not sure because I'm so close to a lot of this stuff. A lot of stuff I don't read, sorry, but I see the print ads all the time and I'm really impressed with those. But anyway, I want to go back to the title line and raise a question because I had a note to myself anyway about the title line anyway.
Sure.
If it's supposed to be a reminder of the public that we're doing something, I'm wondering if there's a standard phrase that can be used to say, you know, another one or edition 5, edition 6, anyway, something to remind people that this is a continuing thing and it's not just a one-off. And maybe a title change of some kind might standardize some way that it's here, you know, it's new, it's next, it's whatever.
Yeah,
It's
we
just a
could-
question that I had.
Sure. They could be numbered. I mean, each newsletter can be numbered so that we, you know, that they could refer back to a specific newsletter. You know, I remember reading number 6 about Pure Water Monterey. Is that
Or
what
the
you,
date? Or the date,
well, it could be.
possibly?
or, you know, news from the water district, news, you know, just some kind of continuous thing. I think that's a good idea, George.
Well, the only issue that is basically getting people's attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when they hear news from the water district number 6, it's like, not exactly
Oh,
exciting.
yeah.
Yeah, good,
But if
good,
it
good point.
relates directly to an issue they have some interest in, then the chances of them opening it are considerably greater. Does that
Um,
make sense?
Amy, by the way, I just looked at our MailChimp list. You are on there. It shows you as Carmel Cello Gal at Comcast.net.
Okay, all right, that's correct. Well, I'll go look again. So I hadn't seen any of them.
Yeah, check your junk.
I'll
mail.
check.
And it comes from MPWMD.
Uh-huh. Thank you.
I've been getting them
Um,
and they look great. I think
one
they
more
look great.
question. I'm curious about the feedback that said that they were, people were complaining, some people, that they were political. Did they mean that just that we had a different opinion than the other side, or did they really say this is political or this is illegal or?
Yeah, they said it borderline using public funds to advocate. And I said, well, we are advocating on behalf of ratepayers. You know, you want
That's right.
safe,
Right.
affordable water supply, and affordability factors in. But yeah, it was, and I recall it might have been Paul Bruno.
It was
you know,
Paul, yeah.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
responded 2 or 3 times to our newsletters.
Yeah,
Yeah, for the most part, they're not saying anything about politics. There have been a few comments just about how we kind of took a strong tack on the Coastal Commission position. And I would say 90% are very positive
Great.
comments.
Thank
Yeah, and I think from the negative feedback, it was a little bit of a recognition like, geez, you guys are getting too good at this. You know, you've figured out how to communicate, you know.
yeah. They got on
At
the
last.
horse and now they're racing with us.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can,
good.
can we have an idea how many comments we're getting? Just a rough idea?
I would say I received probably 10 to 15 comments for each one of the letters that goes out.
Wow, that's great.
And if there's anything that requires a response, I've been forwarding that to Dave to follow up on. You know, most of them don't require any follow-up. Most of them are just, yay, good job. You're doing a great job kind of thing.
Is the
Yeah,
frequency-
most
Sorry.
recently, she shared one where we received blessings of Yeshiva, by one of our public.
everything goes. Yeah.
Yep.
Are they
Like
going
this.
out once a week or? the
Well,
frequency?
it was going out once a week just prior to the Coastal Commission. Yes,
Okay.
we were very heavy up. Yeah, and then I sent out one right after the Coastal Commission, and then basically we've been silent ever since then.
Yeah.
Well, and I just think there's a lot going on and we should stay in the public eye as much as we can during this cycle because like you said, Phil, the double speak is just alarming. You know, they have deep pockets and they can wait and they can delay and so on. In the meantime, we've emerged, I think, pretty clearly as the water supply go-to, you know, agency. And it's not Cal-Am at all. And I think our stepping up in several arenas just shows that we're, as Alvin always likes to say, act like a water company. So
Act like a what?
act
Water
like a water
company.
company.
Yeah,
And so I think we're getting there. I think we're there, but I think the public needs to kind of see the things that we're doing. Is not, there's nothing self-serving about what we're doing. Nothing, absolutely nothing. But how much of it is self-serving by what Cal-Am is doing?
yeah.
Well,
And our language is constantly in the area of, water supply. And the politics charge is coming from the other side saying, in effect, you're not playing fair.
I have one question, quick comment and one question about distribution, if I may. So, I mean, I think the quality, the content, the visual aspect, it's all great. My question is about people who are not receiving this because, like in the community, I live in a retirement community, there's like, what, 150 residents who are not directly Cal-Am customers. So, I mean, I've been sending out forwarding the newsletter to people I know. So I'm thinking of the people who are not getting it because of that, they're not direct customers. Is there something in the newsletter that it tells people they can sign up to receive them if they receive this indirectly?
Yes, I think there is. And
Okay,
the other
good.
thing, Karen, is our mailing list is not Cal-Am customers. So, it's compiled from a number of different places. We've got over
Okay.
25,000 emails right now active in this list. So, yeah, if they want to sign up for it, they can definitely go to our website and fill that button on the top. Populates our MailChimp now, right?
Yeah, good. Okay,
Yeah.
well, when I'm forwarding it to people I know, I'm trying to let them know they can sign up to receive it directly.
Yeah.
I think,
Okay.
I think I could probably more boldly make it clear that if they got the newsletter through a referral, click here. I mean, I could make that a little bit clearer for folks
Yeah.
at the bottom of the newsletter.
Yep.
Okay.
Hey,
Is there a way, just on that point, is there a way to suggest the frequency? Because a lot of people don't want to sign up because, oh my God, I'm just gonna get flooded again. So I don't want to sign up. I mean, is there a way to something to say, approximately once a month? I don't know. Even though it's going to be every 2 weeks, you don't start with that part.
Maybe I could say something like, we only send out newsletters when we feel that there's valuable information to convey, something like that. Because there are going to be times when we send them out on depending on what's going on and how we need to inform the public, there are going to be times when we send them out once a week, but never more than once a week. And I think that's when, when it really becomes punishing, when you start getting 2 or 3 newsletters from the same outfit, in a single week. So once a week, I don't find to be oppressive myself.
yeah,
I don't think most people do. If it's oppressive to them at all, they just simply, unsubscribe, and that's the end of it. So
Yeah.
that is an option.
Well, I think it's great. I know for myself, I'm constantly running into people who seem hungry for information about what's happening. And so I think
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is there any review before each one? This is a question to Dave and Phil. Is there any selection of subject matter that how much lead time do you get? That's number one. But number two is there a theme that we're trying to push in the moment besides an event? One's an event, the other's kind of a theme. And is there some sense of scale on that or priority on that idea?
Well, we were sort of I guess with the first 4 that went out, there were some key issues that I recognized needed to be addressed immediately, and I got buy-off from both Dave and Stephanie to sort of pursue those. But in the future, George, we can definitely sort of isolate out areas that we would like to explore and, include those in newsletters. Absolutely, for sure. Actually, I've got a list of some of the potentials that we could explore.
Well, I'm kind of picking up on a couple things, and Alvin's not a member of this committee, but he
Yeah.
said something the other night that his number one priority is water supply, not Measure J. I know we're going to talk about J too.
Yeah. Sure.
And then, but even though there's that idea, perhaps we have two different issues, not directly related, but ultimately related.
Correct.
How do you keep some things separate in the public eye, or how do you keep the public eye on what we think is important? And I think the event related alerts are really good because it's a current events report. It's an update. It's a continuing thing. So what's the latest? But the other thing is that I think we ought to have some theme about that also. I saw some idea about scale. I mean, not scale, but the priorities on what we're trying to let the public know about. And I do think, and the opportunity that exists in the moment.
Yep.
And I think Cal-Am having double speak, like you said, Phil,
Yeah.
I think that's such a wonderful topic to kind of play with, image wise as well as just language wise. And I would like to see us call Cal-Am out on that kind of thing. But then I go in two directions in my own brain. How much do we want to call out Cal-Am on one thing? How much do we want to call out the district on the other thing? So one's a negative, one's a positive, but one's an attack, one's a promotion. And I don't separate those in my mind so much because I think, yeah, it's all do it all.
Well, I guess what I've been trying to do, and I know that certainly Dave has been sort of wading in on this, and that is to sort of try to strike a balance there. Let's be informational. Let's sort of a balance. If we're going to get any advocacy in out there, let's be subtle about it in the newsletter in particular, and sort of balance that with principally information and education. So that's what I'm looking for all the time is, are we balancing it? Am I starting to sort of weigh too heavily in a certain direction? So I'm very conscious of that, of what you're suggesting there.
I'd like to comment on this question too, the priorities. Although in terms of we, the district, our responsibilities as a district, addressing water supply and Measure J,
Right.
our responsibility to me are equally important. But there are certain times when it makes more sense to prioritize one in terms of communicating with the public. And right now, I think Alvin is right that that right now the water supply should be front and center because of what's happening right now, because Cal-Am's refusing to sign the agreement because it just rained and we're injecting water ASR. We need to continuously show people that we are doing things to solve the water supply problem in a responsible way. And if we do that, the time spent on pointing out what Cal-Am is doing wrong can be relatively small, because you know what I mean? What we're doing right can be, and what we're trying to do can be central. And then in contrast, you don't have to spend as much time saying that Cal-Am is refusing to sign the agreement, for example. Anyway, I think right at this time, Alvin's right that we should prioritize supply.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Mhm.
But I think one thing there, and I think George is sort of bringing it out, and that is that Cal-Am, because of the way in which they communicate with their double speak, really confuses the public.
Mhm.
So I think it's important for us to sort of unscramble the message that's being conveyed out there and try to be as clear as we possibly can be with them as to what is actually going on. You know, and I think sometimes people like Paul Bruno tend to sort of see that as advocacy, just be, just because we're exposing the truth of what is actually going on. But I think that's probably an incredibly important objective right now, is to really sort of keep our eye on the ball in that way, because they're doing it again. I mean, they're doing it right now. You know? It's
Yeah,
just-
and I think that we give people a little break through Christmas,
yeah,
but CalAm's going to file their application for rehearing on the 4th.
uh,
And that's a Wednesday, and I could see us following on the 5th. You know, and we can write this in advance. But so Phil, I don't know if you've seen the letter I sent to Kevin Tilden.
I did.
Yeah, it's gotten around. The point is, as you speak about, you know, doublespeak, they're saying that they're not getting all the interest during construction that they deserve, and that's not really true. And they're not harmed because they haven't provided any evidence that they've used money at a higher interest rate than they're being awarded.
Yeah.
And then they say, you know, I can't ask the company to take a write down of 20 million on the extraction wells. Well, that's not what the decision said.
Yeah.
The decision said, we think you've over padded these numbers with a bunch of common costs, and you can have another bite at the apple in the future to try to get those, but they're not related to the extraction wells in the opinion of the PUC. And so I think when they file their application for rehearing, I think that's an opportunity for us to write something that says, well, apparently they're not interested in water supply for housing, water supply for economic growth, water supply to lift the cease and desist order. They're far more interested in a financial return on the backs of ratepayers. And they had this opportunity to move forward. And I think that timing would be good to just say, you know, the news event is they filed their application for rehearing. Here's what it really means. They're
Right.
willing to put everything on hold over money, even though they've not been harmed financially because they have the future opportunity to get that money.
absolutely.
So I'm looking at that week as another one on this subject matter. We're not going to be able to get into Measure J, which again we'll talk about in a second,
Yeah.
probably until January, late January, early February. So to fill the void, I think we jump on the application for rehearing.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Agreed.
Well, Karen, may I return as chair? I mean, you started the meeting. I just wanted to.
No, Amy actually was
Oh, I
sort of
didn't
in the
know.
beginning, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Gee, my train of thought. Between Jay and water supply. It seems to me we need to present ourselves as multiple dimensions and multi-dimensional. And that shows that we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Good point.
And I think that message is starting to come out because the message is we're active here, we're active there, and more active than most people know about. And so all that's good. But I think just in terms of the future, I'd like to see us merge that, we are multi-dimensional. I mean, as a statement, not as a strategy, but as a statement. So that the public begins to say, oh my God, the district does a lot. I mean, but to remind them of the point, not just to assume that they're going to get the point. That's just what a comment I'm thinking of.
Well,
agreed.
I love what you brought up about Alvin's statement, act like a water company. I think that's really, sort of the basis of it. We need to act like the company we want to be. And the company we want to be certainly would have the sophistication to be able to deal with those two issues at the same time. Yes?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
are
just-
we talked out on this point?
Yeah,
You wanted to?
that's where I think we are. Yep.
Dave, if you agree, we'll move along.
Yep.
So next is Measure J and outreach.
Yeah, just where we're at with Measure J, I'm about 4 days behind. I'll probably end up a week behind, but we have received the appraisal for real estate and the appraisal on water rights. And both of those, once I review it, will go to Doug Dennington, our eminent domain attorney, where he can highlight any particular terms of art that should be spoken a certain way. Excuse me, about to lose all my power, so I'm flipping my iPad there. And so he'll have it. I suspect he'll need probably 2 weeks, which means it won't get into the hands of, and it's the holidays. So early January, it'll be in the hands of Raftellus, who will then pull everything together. And that means we won't see a final product until best case end of January, which means you'd be in a position to make an offer. We'd have to make that determination at a board meeting. And there will be a particular legal style for a formal offer, which we'll have Rutan and Tucker work on. So, think February or early March for an offer. It gets rebuffed. What'll be happening is April will be the timeline for item 4 on this agenda, which is the annual report. And what I'm going to suggest there is that we convert the annual report into something that can be sent to the MailChimp list, which, by the way, will also demonstrate that we walk and chew gum at the same time, because it kind of covers all the things we did in the prior calendar year. But we probably need to have a campaign surrounding making the offer, reminding people what Measure J told us to do. I envision maybe 3 or 4 newsletters in a row, reminding again what Measure J is doing, why the district's doing it on behalf of the voters, what the first step is, what the next step is, and so forth. So somewhere in that time frame, probably February or early March, we will make an offer to Cal-Am. And so that'll be the theme that will be discussed quite a bit publicly. I think we need to get something behind that.
Mhm.
And then I kind of envision that they turn the offer down or say nothing in March. We have got to get our act together, Dave Laredo, myself, and Fran, in updating all the findings. And Karen, as you pointed out, this refusal to sign the water purchase agreement and actually get a water supply moving is just yet another reason to get them out of the way. And so we've got to it's a huge one, but we've got to update the findings and have those findings ready to go. And so chances are that's going to take us into June. And so it'd be June or July where the board would have their hearing of public necessity.
Can I ask just a couple of questions about the timing of these things? Is somebody working on preparing the resolution of necessity now?
Not yet.
Can that work be going on sort of
It can.
parallel behind the scenes?
Yeah, it can. We need to jumpstart it.
Yeah, this refusal to sign the agreement to me is huge. It's like, anyway, and when we make an offer, will we say you have a specified time to respond? If you don't respond by X amount of time, we will deem it rejected, something like that? Dave Laredo?
Yes. It'll be time limited.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so I guess the sooner we can accomplish all these tasks, and I recognize they're not small ones, but the sooner the better. And if I would really like it if we can somehow, vote out the resolution of necessity and so on before summer vacation is upon us, if possible. Why are you all laughing?
I'm not laughing. I agree.
Summer vacation is a nice idea.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
that.
No, I mean,
We're
it's
laughing
not
at.
in terms of us, but in terms of getting people's attention. That's
Oh,
what I mean.
Yeah, I think that may be a big lift, only because the findings were prepared in draft form probably 3 years ago now, and really need to be updated, thoroughly vetted. I think we've got some latitude to not have a ton of detail behind certain things. You can make, a finding that's a broad statement, and you don't have to present all the evidence. Later, you probably will. So we
In
have
the
to be-
eminent domain
yeah,
proceeding.
once discovery happens and depositions are taken, well, you said this, where's your proof? And
Mhm.
so I don't think we can make any finding that can't be proven through some evidence. Dave, I don't know, feel free to weigh in on that, but so we just need to make sure that what's going to be the basis for this board to make a decision that it's in the public interest and that we're going to start an eminent domain proceeding has to be really clean, has to be really thorough. Maybe we can do that by June. I don't see it any sooner.
There's a lot of work that needs to go into that.
Yeah.
And
Is there a relationship to the feasibility study, which was 4 years ago, and the findings there? I know one's elementary and one's more advanced, but is there a theme from doing one to the other? Is there a transition kind of logic to explain then and now?
Well, yeah, that feasibility study will be part of the findings.
Okay.
And I think we'll bolster it with a finding that says none of those conclusions would change with the passage of time. Because, the conclusions were it's financially feasible and it's in the ratepayers' interest and so on. I think what the one corner we've boxed ourselves into at this point is we've dispensed with updating a rate study until after we already filed the eminent domain proceeding, because we kind of took that piece out, and at some point before we go in front of a bench trial, we're probably going to want to update it. And so we don't have any new findings. We'll be relying on the old rate impacts and so forth. But there's no reason to assume that, gee, what held 4 years ago doesn't hold today. The other thing is that study included the assumption that a desal plan exists. Well, our offer is going to assume that I don't see a desal plant. Do you see a desal plant? We can't offer you money for something that doesn't exist. And then the 120 million that they've already expended that they'll want to get back, we don't touch that. We don't make an offer to compensate them for that. And that comes out in future discussions about severance and regulatory assets and those kinds of things. So, the position we'll be defending at this point in time is, here's what we think you're worth. We've proven that buying you and operating under government authority is cheaper for the ratepayers. And, that conclusion, while, occurring in November of 2019, is still current today. And that's the best we're going to do. We're not going to redo everything.
there's like this common sense factor that should be in our favor, which is if Cal-Am can run the system and make tons of money doing it, and all that's, there's publicly available information to show that. And our costs would be lower. There's lots of costs they have that we wouldn't have. Why would it not be feasible for us to provide the service at lower cost?
Right, and I think we can enter into it findings related to future cost of capital will be cheaper. Things that have only been touched on briefly, but when they attempted to show feasibility, they said, here's what it looks like under current operations, and here's what it would look like under public operations. And one is, the second one's better than the first one. But even if there weren't any savings, so here's just another finding. Ignoring operational savings under current operating regime, in the future, it will be cheaper because the cost of capital is cheaper, and we will not be paying property taxes and so forth. So there'll be some specifics that will get highlighted as kind of bolstering what you just said. Here are things that will not have to be paid for by the public under public ownership. And those are pretty simple findings. We don't have to pay New Jersey. We don't have to pay San Diego. We don't have to pay property taxes. And therefore, it's in the public interest. You don't have to say, here's how much we're going to save, because that does move every year. And it moves when they rate base a new asset and so forth. But the fundamental truths over things we don't have to pay for, we can factor in. Now, one of the problem areas is when Claremont lost their bench trial, and George Sanoff was involved, they focused in on the property tax issues. And that judge in particular said, well, property taxes are not a savings. And he's right and he's wrong, because they are a savings for the water ratepayer, and it does reduce your water rates. But he took kind of a macroeconomic approach to it and said, well, but then you're winning, but they're losing. And so the winners and losers are equal. Therefore, it's not truly a societal savings, if you will. So we'll have to be careful about how we make any of our findings so we don't put ourselves in the same position to lose. But, many of those things can just be said at face value without the specifics behind it. And that's why the conclusions from 2019 don't really get stale. It was just the first time that somebody could see on paper, oh, there are things you're not going to have to pay for as a public operator. And those won't,
I think you told me also that the property tax revenue over time for Cal-Am's properties declines. It's not appreciating all the time. And since we did the last feasibility study, there's been, I think, one rate case, right? So there's now all kinds of rate increases that have been approved that would be factor into the cost, the rate study, right?
Yeah. So
it might actually come out, the numbers might actually come out better than the 2019.
Yeah, they might. So property taxes don't really go down. They just get smaller as a proportion of the whole. So those savings, the savings declines because, as you point out, rate base and the rates themselves, inflation goes up. And so, I think their current revenue requirement's about 88 million, and 3 years from now, even without a desal plant, it's going to be over 100 million. That's just under a GRC. And so if your assets haven't really changed, then the property taxes you're paying as a percentage of that 100 million is smaller. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of those kinds of things that happen. But yeah, we're at the point where if you want water supply, they completely missed their deadlines. We filed the complaint. None of the language from the complaint is in the draft findings that Dave alluded to, that we have from, a while ago. And none of this behavior over signing or not signing the water purchase agreement are in those. And so we have a lot of work to do to get them where they are, but
There's one thing I don't want to get lost, and this is about the findings of necessity. Like Dave Laredo told us at a committee meeting earlier this week that the way you put it, David, that CalAm has been here before, failing to invest in the necessary infrastructure to provide adequate service, that this goes back decades. I didn't know any of that history, but it seems like it might be really relevant in the findings of necessity to show this pattern going back so many decades. What do you think, Dave Laredo?
Oh, I think that's, yes, absolutely. You start by giving a background, and we've had an extensive background. There was a moratorium on new connections in the 70s. People collectively recall that was drought related. The drought actually occurred after the moratorium was put in place. The PUC imposed that moratorium as a penalty upon CalAm because the PUC found that CalAm was failing to invest in its system.
yeah, and they
So this-
also limited their rate of return for a number of years until they invested in their system.
And that's
That's a long
when CalAm,
his-
that's when CalAm changed from a surface water system to groundwater and started pumping the underflow of the river. And that's what triggered all the environmental degradation caused by CalAm's practices. So it can directly be linked back.
I have a question about the profit motive, the profit incentive that exists with CalAm. Is that a worthwhile argument to consider for PR purposes or for just setting the stage to remind the public that this is an example of when there's competing interests in water supply? One has a profit motive and therefore has more expense. It's not like we're better than you are, except that legally we have a different standing. I don't know. I'm just kind of raising the question about, is a profit incentive itself an issue to alert the public to or remind the public? And maybe that's a little bit of a stretch. I don't know.
George, I think that is a viable path. The PUC wants CalAm to come up with an operational scenario, assuming that it does have multiple sources of supply, which should be operated. A rational person would say you take the least expensive, least impactful water first, not the most expensive. But if CalAm has its desal, unless it's compelled to do otherwise, it could take the most expensive water because that will have the greatest effect on CalAm's pocketbook.
And then my second, go ahead, Amy, on
Well,
this point.
Just in response to this point, I have had feedback from, discussions with people that I know that you can't really effectively attack CalAm because they're a for-profit company, because this country relies on that. We're businesses and the businesses have to make money. So you have to be careful about how you say it.
Yeah.
Well, they're a monopoly though. So we have to
Well,
regulate
that's-
monopolies because
that's true.
there's not
Yeah.
really a competitive environment.
That's a different point. I agree.
Yeah, but I think
Well-
we sometimes forget that our electricity is provided by PG&E. Yes, community power has put a dent in that, but we always say that 85% of urban water in California is provided for by public agencies.
Yeah.
Well, 85% of electricity is provided by private companies. And so, yeah, Amy's right. We have to be careful how we say it, because you can't just say, well, I hate private industry.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. I think, there are people who will have a very negative reaction to that. If it just sounds like we're we're anti-private, for-profit
Yeah.
companies. Yeah.
But the complaints about them being not taking care of the company, not taking care of their customers, shoddy, not replacing things when they need to be, that's open game, I think.
It is, and that's what we hope to get into the findings. I apologize. I scheduled a call at 11. It's 11:01. So Stephanie, can you close out this meeting without me?
Yes.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
And I-
Thank you.
yes.
And I think that the pictures, the photos from that period of CalAm's, what you were talking about, Phil, I think, for that early period of the damage that was done when they were pulling water out of
Yeah,
those pictures of the Carmel River are devastating.
Yeah.
They're really good ones.
So I have one other question. I think we're all headed toward the end of this meeting, but one other question about how to treat the litigation, whether you file, whether it's completed, or what the findings or the court decision is. I would hope that that we can let the public know more rather than less, but it competes with all the other priorities too. But that's where the progress or the action is, it seems to me, is at the findings, not the findings, at the decisions that are being made, the interpretation of those decisions, and the people that are reacting to it. And we're going to have a couple of new things happening shortly. And I don't have an idea about how to treat it. But I do think, I mean, the annual report will be one thing, which will have a lot of updates and so on. But how do we update the public when there's a sequential thing that's not necessarily directly related to our priorities? And I'm thinking like the Taxpayer Association. I don't know, whatever that decision is, it's going to be news.
George, one thing that we have to be sensitive to, this litigation concerning the Coastal Commission, we are going to have co-petitioners in that. And our co-petitioners have a different take on how much to provide to the public in advance. And part of that is because they have a longer history of challenging CalAm in the Superior Court. And I've heard specifically from them that they want to keep the pre-filing information as limited as possible. And I know that's different than what our board would like or has stated it would like, but so there's a narrow path there.
Well, thanks for reminding us, because I mean, and that's one reason why I'm raising the question: what's the value of doing something, but also what's the strategic interest we have in the outcome? So,
yeah. Well, in this case, whatever is filed will be filed before the end of December. So then it'll be fair game to talk in the past tense about what has been done.
okay.
Something has been filed and it's been joined in by these agencies, and it will be a known fact. And quite frankly, from my perspective, the public's got so much going on between now and the 25th and the 1st that sometimes news gets not the top of mind.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we did announce, we did get a front page above the fold story 2 days ago.
Mhm.
But I think the next story will be after the fact that in fact it's been filed, and we'll know what are the allegations and who are the parties.
I think we've
Okay,
got
fair
a lot
enough.
of information to keep Dennis Taylor,
Yeah,
Yeah.
out of retirement.
the writer.
Concerning the news coverage, and there was quite a lot over the Coastal Commission decision, and not just local papers, and some of it was very good. And Melody's been sending in a lot of that news coverage for our board meetings. But it occurs to me maybe we should have a page on our website where people can easily access those
good idea.
the news coverage, the good news coverage. And I'm thinking that, someday, well, mainly journalists or historians, might appreciate being able to access that information easily. Now, anybody who's trying to check on what events were over a particular development, does that make any sense? What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Good idea.
Yeah.
And my last point is how much more discussion needs to be around, I don't know, maybe I think 3 and 4 have been combined in this discussion anyway, but I'm going back to the annual report. What kind of discussion could we have about that, Steph?
Well, I think we were talking about, generally the annual report includes all the information about various different things the district has done over the year. So that's where Dave mentioned that being kind of the way to tell the public about all the other things that we do besides water supply. But it also sounds like the direction from the committee was to also focus in a little bit on what we did with water supply and kind of put that front and center, and then include all of the information that we normally would include in our annual reports. So, and then I think we talked about sending that out to the MailChimp list.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so we'll work with Phil on format and content. And if the committee would like to take a look at the draft, we'd be happy to pass that through. And if we need to have a meeting, we can have a meeting once we get a draft together.
I
So
would like to.
is this a two-step thing? Would the old style annual report, which is more detail, more explanation, and the MailChimp would be a condensation of that? Is it a two-step process like that? Or is the MailChimp condensation supposed to be the annual report?
Yeah, I think we would do it through MailChimp. So we normally would put together the annual report. We have a filing requirement to have the annual report adopted by the board. I think it's in mid-March. But that document, we have printed copies of it available at the office. But I think we would also be able to send it out as an electronic document to our mailing list rather than sending it out through the mail or doing something like that.
And it's always on the website, is that right?
And it's on the website, yes.
Do we normally send it to our elected representatives?
Again, this is, I'm not sure where it's been sent in the past. Our mail, obviously our electronic mail list has had some challenges in the last couple of years. So I think, and our elected representatives are currently on our MailChimp list, so they would be getting copies of this as well.
Good. I would think of them as part of the audience for that.
Yes,
annual
exactly.
report. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So I think we're pretty good on this. And if I kind of saw some heads nodding that you'd like to see the draft. I think we have probably a meeting scheduled for sometime in January or early February, and we can bring the draft to you at that time. I think it does go to the board at the March meeting. So you'd have an opportunity to provide feedback before it goes to the board.
That
be
would be good. I think it's not a real concern. It's kind of a curiosity question, but with MailChimp, do you structure your approach to the annual report differently? Or is it essentially this similar kind of annual report that'll be, I don't know, more interesting or more graphics or more photos or more, I don't know, more or less anything. I don't know. Does MailChimp change what you're trying to present?
Yeah, and I think that's a question Phil and I will need to discuss, because certainly with MailChimp, it's a kind of a different, we've been sending out the newsletter, which is just a page, and the annual report is a much more comprehensive document. So we'll have to figure out how do we provide that, and maybe it's providing a link to the website so that people can go and get the electronic version online, and then just a short summary of what's in that annual report as part of what goes out in the MailChimp.
Okay, good. Well, I'm okay with where that stands and where we might see it again in 2023. early.
Great.
Any other comments from the committee and anyone else?
Great work.
I just want to thank you all. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Phil, Dave, and I think
Yeah,
things are, thank goodness that you are doing what you're doing, Phil and Stephanie, both of you. This is what we needed for a long time. I'm so glad we're finally there.
Yay.
Now we can focus on some other things.
Yeah, thank you, committee. And yeah, we'll make sure that you see the draft.
Okay, good. Thank
Yeah,
Yeah, I
you.
just have one
Anything more?
commentary.
Okay.
I just have
Oh,
one
Joe.
commentary before this meeting concludes or adjourns. So there was no members of the public during the entire duration of this meeting, and that's why we didn't take in public comment for any of the matters on this public outreach committee meeting.
Thank you, Joelle.
Well, and
Mhm.
thank you for reminding me what I forgot to do.
It's okay.
No, I was aware there were no public participants the whole
Okay.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you,
All right.
Joelle.
Thank you,
All
Joel,
right.
and thank everyone. Sorry.
Happy holidays, you guys.
Yes,
happy
You
solstice.
too.
fair enough.
Thanks, Karen, for the
Bye.
call.
Oh, you're welcome.
Adjourned?